with a dedicated call centre.
This is News Talk.
All right, how's it going? You're very welcome along to Thursdays Off the Ball. Nathan with you until 9 o'clock this evening. We've got a really busy show coming up over the next couple of hours. I spent my morning in Abbottstown.
Oh, really?
Seeing who you would bump into, and you'd be surprised who you'd bump into in the corridors.
It's where everybody knows your name here.
Well, yes, and not always in a good way, Richie. Martin O'Neill did just pop in the middle of the afternoon as the Furore was kicking off. So if anyone hasn't been following, the FAI released a statement last night saying that we're going to send up a €300,000 fund as sort of a safety net that if clubs somehow get into trouble, players' wages will always be guaranteed. We're going to provide 150,000, and the PFAI are going to provide 150,000, to which the PFAI said, news to me, pal.
What did I say last night when this was announced? That one side are basically being forced into, oh yeah, we're doing this, what are you doing? I was like, we don't have €150,000.
So
but if you take a step back, you're basically saying to players, we want you to pay your own wages, aren't you?
That is the PFAI line, that where do the PFAI get their money? They get their money from the players in the country. So they're asking them to set up some sort of an insurance for themselves in case your wages don't get paid. I don't know. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense.
No, can you imagine any walk of life that you went to workers and said, there is this fund, a distress fund of fellow workers getting into trouble.
We're not saying things are going to go wrong, but
basically you would pay.
Yes.
So, okay. And who would agree to that?
So, well, nobody right now is agreeing to that. The PFAI came out, said they were astounded. Then Stephen McGuinness was on OTBAM this morning, going through the timeline as they saw it. Again, felt that the FAI had thrown a bit of a grenade on the situation because it's turned into a media circus, not talking to the PFAI in advance before they released this statement. And then, as luck would have it, the FAI were today releasing their yearly finances. Now, there was some questioning of whether this was timed so that maybe there was going to be something in the finances that didn't want to be the big story and that this was something of a smokescreen. It doesn't seem that way. It seems that the finances were very much along expected lines, revenue saying quite solid, the debt on the Aviva Stadium is coming down. But it did mean that John Delaney was available for interview.
Yeah.
Fran Gavin, who is the head of the Electricity League, the director of competitions, was available for interview. So we spoke with both of them. And Stephen McGuinness, who works out of Abbottstown. So when we finished speaking to them, we obviously gave Stephen McGuinness a call and said, do you happen to be around? We now have reaction to get your reaction for a second time, so we'll bring you that as well. It's all an absolute mess. It is the Declan Lynch line that they are the Galacticos.
Dysfunctional body that other dysfunctional bodies called the Galacticos. Yeah, it's
one of his
perennial line that will be repeated for many decades to come, I think.
So we have John Delaney and Fran Gavin giving the FAI's point of view coming up, and Stephen McGuinness from the PFAI side. That is after 8 o'clock. John Giles will be with us in studio at 7:30. A lot to talk to John about, particularly Eamon Dunphy and his decision to leave RTE. 30 years they shared a studio together, so many happy times.
Yeah, and before that they were obviously involved together at Rovers, and they played alongside each other for Ireland, and they knew each other well. They knew each other to an extent growing up. Giles would be a couple of years older, so they've a long-standing relationship. So John should have quite an insight into what makes such a strange man.
I'd be interested to know if Dunphy's, like, because I remember talking to John about this off air and asking him, because we were talking about the whole punditry thing surrounding the World Cup, and I just happened to ask him, do you miss it? And John's reaction was no.
Yeah.
He was like, I never really liked being on TV, or never was into being on TV. It was just something that I did.
He was reluctant from the start. He really had to be strong-armed into doing it.
I'd be interested to know if, and we don't know it's going to be the end of his TV career for Dunphy, but I presume there would be a substantial part of him that misses that and misses the reaction to it.
I would think so. I would think around the big Ireland games and big Champions League games, I would guess that he would miss it. Like obviously, I worked with Eamon for nearly 20 years, so I know him quite well. So I would maybe have a different view of people that don't know him as well. Like, and I can see flaws in it, but I could see a lot of positives.
Well, give us the Eamon Dunphy you know.
Well, he's great fun. Like that's.
I don't think there's ever been a doubt, to be fair.
Sometimes he's too much fun.
But actually, I think that has been missing from him on TV the last few years. I think that's why it doesn't surprise me he's gone. I don't think he looks like he's been enjoying it for the last few years. Maybe since John and Bill haven't been around, that it was the three of those, and then later the Fab Four, with if you want to go down that route, with when Liam Brady joined 20 years ago. But I have to be honest, my view of Eamon is coloured by nights out, and some of the best nights out I've ever had.
Go on.
And the most strangest.
How many of these are repeatable on air?
Well, I'll just a couple of. I'll have to be careful.
Have we got the dump button ready out there, lads?
You always end up in strange company when you're with Eamon. So there was one night we were out for a meal a few years ago, and this is kind of Celtic Tiger era when there was money swirling around. So
showbiz, baby.
So newspapers had money to take out somebody like Dunphy into a nice restaurant. So we went downstairs to a private bar in Shanahan's on the Green.
Oh,
which is a
this was the boom.
Yeah.
Good start.
But
this now, yeah.
There was only two people there: Tom Jones and his manager. So of course, I think they'd been playing a concert or something, or the night day before. Maybe they're going to be late or something. So of course, like, do you think Dunphy would stand at the bar on his own when Tom Jones is a card? No. So he has to go over and he introduces himself. And it turned out his manager was a Millwall fan, and he remembered Eamon playing for Millwall. But the sing-song eventually, because Eamon always wants to sing. And like that's if you go out, he always sings, and you know that in chat shows. And Miriam McCallan said he ends up singing. So he started singing, and Tom Jones started trying to do harmonies. And like Tom Jones is one of the great popular music voices, and Eamon goes, "Shut up! I'm singing." But there was another night, I can't go into in detail, I'll just say that we ended
up... Just don't name any names.
No, I just named names. Ended up with Bono and Paddy O'Shea and Eamon Dunphy. So you can imagine how that goes. That's the kind of company you used to end up with them. So that's why I have a lot of affection for Eamon for those times in my life, but I'll never get back.
Does he still party as hard?
Not at all, no. In fairness, like, he's 73 next month. Like, it's...
a number.
I would say he picks his moments, but I think there's a... Like, it's interesting... I thought it was the first tournament I watched on RT that was really dull, and there was no controversy, and there was no major talking points. And I think part of that is that Eamon hasn't been himself for a while, and I think you're wondering where RT are going. Like Eamon did a piece for our paper today about it, and he says TV3 have a stronger panel now in Graham Souness, Neil Lennon, Brian Kerr, and they have. There's three knowledgeable men, and they're opinionated, and they've strong opinions. They have a decent presenter in Tommy, who isn't afraid to poke his stick through the bars of the cage. They have the bodybuilder commentator, Mr. McIntyre. Mr. Kilban helps out, he's not bad. So they have a great package now. And RT are up against it, plus they have a lot of the rights now. So I think it's a huge challenge for RT soccer coverage, where they go. And there's a new head of sport, Declan McBennett. He had an interview with the Gaelic Life last week, and a lot was made of him saying we don't want personal attacks from pundits, you know, in sport. And I wonder what that means, because it's a very subjective thing. Like, if you...
Is that Joe Brawley talking about Sean Kavanagh?
Yeah, well, like, you can pick out an example of that. But for example, if you have Martin O'Neill's interviews with Tony O'Donoghue, when Martin O'Neill really gets his back up over very little, and if you go back to the studio and somebody says, I think that was quite an immature response or a childish response or out of order by Martin O'Neill, is that a personal attack? I think it's fair comment, but somebody else might interpret differently, and I think it's an odd thing to put out there.
It's a difficult line to somehow uphold as to, is Martin O'Neill fair game, or amateur GAA players totally off limits, or do you have the same...
I don't think it's necessarily what their field is in, or, you know, if they're amateur or if they're professional. I think when you're going down the line of throwing out lines, you can forget about him as a man. That's the kind of personal attack, I think, without wanting to put words into McBennett's mouth, that he would be keen to avoid. Actually commenting on what they've just seen with a degree of fairness is absolutely fine and should be regarded. And, you know, if Martin O'Neill, for one, or if Brian Cody or whoever comes out with a line in an interview that isn't necessarily kosher, being able to call them on it has got to be part of it.
But as
regards calling the person into question, probably fair enough.
But if you look at across the media the last 2 days, a lot of outlets had, say, top 10 Eamon Dunphy quotes. And if you went through the 10, you could make a case that 8 of those are personal attacks.
Rod Little's a Millwall fan, but that's the important thing.
Rod Little has forgiven him. That is the main thing.
Yeah, I believe Eamon was very impressed with that. He's going to put it on his website. That's
really?
An endorsement for Rod Little, yeah.
Wow. The Newsround brought to you this evening with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. So John Giles in studio 7:30. This whole latest FAI controversy coming from 8 o'clock. And we'll also go to Niall McGrath, chat about Conor McGregor, who has avoided jail, just getting community service.
Can he do that here? Because I have a lot of weeding that could be and I know he's to do anger management as well. I could play a mindfulness tape in the background while he does my weeding.
There's definitely some sort of a documentary on Conor McGregor going to anger management classes.
Fair play to the tweeter who sent it into the Off the Ball account earlier on when we put out the news about McGregor's community service. They just had that scene from The Simpsons going, this is America, Krusty, we don't send our celebrities to jail.
We should really get to the news round because it's a really, really busy evening. What are you starting with?
We'll start with events in London today because Ireland's women will play in a World Cup quarter-final in hockey, that is, for the first time ever. Anna O'Flanagan's first quarter goal was enough to seal a 1-0 victory over India this afternoon, and with it, top spot in Pool B with a game to spare. Ireland are assured of top spot in the pool regardless of what happens against the hosts England on Sunday. Forward Nikki Daly spoke after the match, and she says they've already exceeded expectations.
I don't think, we really fear anyone. There's no pressure on us. We're ranked 15th in this tournament, so, there was no pressure on us from the start. And I think, knowing that going into our first game, we knew if we played well and we played to our game plan that we could take points off teams, and that's exactly what we've done, so we're absolutely delighted.
This is an incredible story. They're one of the only amateur teams at the World Cup. They went very close to qualifying for the last couple of Olympics. You have amazing people like Shirley McKay has nearly 270 caps. I think the most capped player in any sport in Ireland in the history of sport.
I think that was the 61st goal for O'Flanagan today in an Irish jersey too. So
yeah, and I think she's based in Holland, I think, and she's a qualified solicitor, but she put her legal career on hold because Dutch hockey is quite strong to try and improve herself. And the coach is a really interesting guy, Graham Shaw. There's an interview Kieran Shannon did with Examiner with him. Very interesting. He played a bit of hurling and Gaelic football, played in soccer. A friend of Damien Duff's played in Lourdes Celtic with him in midfield, and he's very interesting ideas on the game, and he's very he managed Monkstown, and I can't remember the details, but I think it was an Irish Cup final or something. Yeah. But I think they had 2 players sent off, and they were 3-1 down. And it's a scenario he'd always thought of, and he said, "What would we do in that scenario?" And he thought, "I'll take off the goalkeeper." Because I'm not sure. The ins and outs of hockey's don't. I'm not sure of, but it meant he had an extra outfield player, and they got back into the game. Then he put the keeper back on for a shootout at the end, and the keeper made the shootouts to win the game. So. Right. Seems to think outside the box.
They've appointed good thinkers in Irish hockey, to be fair to them. Craig Fulton before, and now Alexander Cox, who's previously won an Olympic medal with the Dutch women's side back in 2012. They seem to go for fairly good coaches.
Yeah. Let's go to Cliona Foley, who's on the line, presenter of the Off the Bench podcast, and who has had several members of the Irish hockey team in the studio over the last couple of weeks. Cliona, can you put this into some sort of context? Beating the USA, beating India, as to how big an achievement it is for Irish hockey?
Well, the commentary on TV today was they've torn up the form book, and they absolutely have. They're the second lowest ranked of 16 teams. America were ranked 7th. They beat them 3-1 in their first game, and China were ranked 10th, I think, and they beat them today 1-0. Now, a really tense game today. I mean, extremely tense, and they got an early goal again from a penalty corner, and they were holding out for a lot of the time, and I know it sounded like Graham Shaw was pretty nervous himself, but absolutely have torn up the form book. And what's really interesting about them, I was out at a press event with them about a month ago, or a little bit more than a month ago, was how relaxed they were. There's absolutely no pressure on them. So that day they were all slagging each other and just relaxed. And I really noticed it. I was over at the first match in London on Saturday night, and they were exactly the same before the game started. And today you could see on TV they were exactly the same. They were all laughing and joking, smiling during the anthem, relaxed. You can really see it. They're absolutely playing with no fear. And Kieran is right. The coach has a very apart from them being really, really good technical players and playing out their skin at the moment, he has a very interesting attitude to coaching. He plays a certain way with them. They score on the break, but they also don't come back and crowd out the defence, because he says just it doesn't feel right for them. And he sort of has a spatial awareness thing going on with them, So they're very, and what's really interesting about them, Nathan, is how they came to hockey. And we had 3 of them in and off the bench, and people can catch it on the podcast link. But they've all come. An awful lot of them have played other sports, but settled eventually on hockey. So a lot of them are multi-talented.
You mentioned that they were playing with no pressure on them, and that they have totally turned up the form book in this. They were the lowest ranked side in Pool B, and they've already managed to qualify for the quarter final. But was this a shot to nothing going to this World Cup, or was there, when you were talking to them, a real belief actually that they could shake it up?
There was a real sense that they were going to give people trouble. They were absolutely convinced of it. Now, a couple of people I talked to, and including them as well, had said in advance of it, look, the way hockey is at the moment, kind of the top 5 are strong, but you could take anybody in the next, down to the end of the 16. But actually, they also said to me privately, no, we can beat England. On our day, if we play well, well we could beat England, and that's exactly how they think, and that's exactly how they're playing. You know, they were passing the ball around in defence. I think they were giving the coach a heart attack today, but like in the last 5 minutes, and Kieran was talking about that India took off their goalie, I think, in the last few minutes and threw in a kicking back, which you can do in hockey, just to throw people forward. And Ireland still played the ball out around in defence. You know, they didn't panic. They play a real possession game, and they're really skillful. I mean, really skillful players. And their touch at the moment is really, really sharp. But it isn't that just that they've qualified for the quarter-final. They're the first team to be assured of a quarter-final place, and they're in a group with England, who are the reigning Olympic champions, and who have to beat them on Sunday just to kind of steady themselves, if you like, and get themselves in, because England have actually drawn their 2 games. They drew to America and they drew to India so far.
And where are they in terms of Olympic qualification then?
For the next Olympics?
Yes.
I honestly don't know. I genuinely don't know.
We'll have a look and see.
I'm presuming the Olympic qualifications go on World League competitions, I think, but I will double check that up for the weekend anyway and see.
So that's 7 o'clock
Sunday
ranking, for the England game.
Already, I'm sure their ranking is going to move them. You know, but they've come terribly close to qualifying for the Olympics, and I think that's also partly why they're playing so well, because they were absolutely heartbroken not to qualify for the last Olympics. They were beaten in a playoff by in a sudden death shootout by China, and that absolutely broke their hearts. Like they had to win that game, and they were going to Rio, and they also came very close. I think they were beaten on goal average for the London Olympics, so they've come awfully close. They've retained about half of their really strong veteran players, and then filled in around them with some really talented players. And they have players playing in America in scholarships. They have few people playing semi-pro in Holland and Germany, and then they have people as Kieran said, people like Shirley McKay, who's 267th cap today, and their goalkeeper is fantastic. She's only 22. She's in American scholarship at the moment, and she has 72 caps already. And I interviewed her last week, the week before that, and I was saying to her, "Did you ever play outfield?" And she said, "Yeah, I played outfield, but I was too dangerous, and in the end, I had to go into goals because I just did too much damage." And so she's quite an interesting character, but she is afraid of nothing. She made some sensational saves against America, and she made a few cracking saves today as well.
All right, Cliona, great stuff as always. Thanks a lot for taking the call.
No problem.
Cliona Foley there, presenter of the Off the Bench podcast, and you can hear that Off the Bench where she has 3 members of the Irish women's hockey team in studio up on offtheball.com right now.
Cypriot Cup winners AEK Larnaca, the latest obstacles between Dundalk and a potential place in the Europa League group stages. Looking ahead to the first leg of tonight's qualifier at Oriel Park is Maura Trasny-Chiali.
Yes, welcome to a sold-out Oriel Park, and very shortly over 3,000 people are going to converge here for the second round of the Europa League. They've already overcome Tallinn. Now obviously Stephen Kenny and Dundalk will be trying to see if they can copy their home league run into the European stage and overcome AEK Larnaca. Of course, keeping a clean sheet or even a win here would be great before they go into their second leg, before they travel to a very warm Cyprus next week. But let's not forget they're up against a tricky team who even managed to put Cork City out of the Europa League this time last year. They also have some superstars, and they've been known to put some superstar teams by the wayside as well. For example, Dinamo Minsk fell against them a few seasons back as well. We don't know what kind of game to expect. What we do know is that Stephen Kenny says he's confident, that he says he's done his homework, and he's also said himself that he is going to be playing defensively, but also hoping for a bit of attacking play as well. So hopefully that he says that they can go over to Cyprus in a week's time with more than just a draw. That's what he's hoping for. It remains to see what happens. Kick-off here is at 7:45.
Daniel Cleary in for Sean Gannon at right back for Dundalk tonight, his first European start for the club, and kick-off at 7:45.
And I believe in typical Stephen Kenny fashion, he's had a go at... He's had his say on the Park O'Keefe situation and the Mesut affair in his match programme notes tonight.
And to think they were having a vote in England as to whether or not you needed match programmes anymore at some lower league clubs. Dear God, it's one of the most entertaining parts of the week is when Stephen Kenny gets going.
There should be a collection, an anthology of them. So
I think there probably will be by the time he retires. Yeah. They'll release it as a book, and it do really well.
What was he saying, Richie?
He says in his programme notes tonight he claims Liam Miller's family are being treated without dignity by the GAA authorities in Cork, and he goes on to say, and I quote, "When Damien Duff called the GAA committee dinosaurs, he was doing dinosaurs a disservice." I
would say that he is wrong when he says the GAA authorities in Cork, because the Cork County Board have said that they have no issue with the game taking place at Páirc Uí Chaoimh and were willing to let it take place at Páirc Uí Chaoimh, but there was nothing they could do. Their hands were tied. Yeah. It's in GAA rulebook that they simply can't open it up. it was at Croke Park then, the next level, where they decided to release the statement and decided not to open it up. So I think focusing it on GA authorities in Cork is probably a little bit unfair.
Surprised it's still dragged on this long, though.
Well,
given there has been a meeting, like, you just make your decision in the meeting. What is there? Like, it's been made clear they can open it if they want, that the loopholes are there. So you either open it or you're not.
Well, we're heading for a full week now since this became a bit of a storm and a controversy, and last Saturday night was when John Horan spoke after one of the Super 8 matches and said they released a statement saying, yeah, we want to meet the organising committee. So even from then on, there was an assumption straight away that it's going to happen at Páirc Uí Chaoimh, yet for whatever reason we're still waiting for a follow-up.
You never know, it could be tonight. Elsewhere this evening, Stephen Ward and Jeff Hendrick both start for Burnley in their first leg away to Aberdeen. It's Burnley's first European game since 1967. John Walters and Kevin Long on the bench for Burnley there. Tommy Hoban starts for the Dons after joining from Watford on loan in the week. Stephen Gleeson and Git Forrester are both on the bench. And Stephen Gerrard's Rangers are away to Croatian side Osijek.
Proper game of football, that. Proper Brexit game of football. Battle of Britain, Burnley, Aberdeen, to real football towns.
Imagine that Burnley get into Europe for the first time since 67. They're waiting for the first draw. Where are you going to go? Croatia, Larnaca. No, you're going to Aberdeen.
It's probably the only place in Britain that's still raining.
And they're playing with bloody late as well.
Small steps, and you'd be in Larnaca, I'd say, quicker than you'd be in Aberdeen from most places in Britain.
And apparently they're playing was delayed, so they probably would have been in Larnaca quicker than they were in Aberdeen.
They flew.
They flew, yeah. They're in the Premier League now, baby.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Stephen Gerrard's Rangers, that's official, isn't it? They'll always be called Stephen Gerrard's Rangers.
They have to be that.
Should we be well, obviously we have Dundalk in League of Ireland actually, but we have Irish players playing in England, playing in Europe once again. Something we should be excited about.
It's happened in the previous round, Nathan. That's what we're getting excited about.
Were Burnley in a previous round?
No, the Cork and Dundalk.
I understand that. I'm saying playing for the Premier League teams in Europe.
Yeah, well, it depends how far they get. Well, like, there's obviously going to be players in the third qualifying round, regardless of who comes through Aberdeen and Burnley.
Give us a quick run through then. We'll get obviously into it in more detail after 8 o'clock, but what's been going on between the FAI and the PFAI?
Yeah, the war of words shows no sign of abating. Players Association General Secretary Stephen McGuinness today accused the association of point scoring. He was speaking on OTBAM. It follows that FAI proposal of a joint emergency fund for clubs that find themselves unable to pay the players' wages. To get to the heart of the matter, we started right at the top on FAI Chief Executive John Delaney.
Does it just need you to step in, even if it's a 1 hour meeting with the PFAI where everybody can clear the air and you can start again? Because this obviously isn't doing anybody any favours.
I think, Nathan, you'll be speaking to Fran a bit and you can go through every bit about what's gone over the last week at an operation level. My view is strategy, and I've mentioned Drogheda.
So you don't intend on getting involved?
Well, I think there's somebody in Fran, Gavin, who's appointed to deal with those matters. No more than there's people here to deal with legal matters and finance matters and high performance matters. And I think when you interview Fran, he'll bring you through all of that.
So we did ask Fran, Gavin.
Look, we've always been open to get anything that makes the game better, and any relationship with our stakeholders. If it can be improved, we'll try and improve it. But it works both ways. The responsibility is on all stakeholders to act responsibly around these situations. We do our business internally. We don't do it out in the public. We just don't. We're not into it. We try and resolve the issues internally. We need to keep that. There is a trust issue between the FAI, I think, at the moment. That's fair to say, and the PFAI. I think that's that's unfortunate.
Do you trust them?
But well, look at. Unfortunately, we don't do our business in the public domain. That's what we don't do. These issues can be resolved internally and quickly, but anything that feels like there's a media circus around it, that affects all the various stakeholders that are involved in solving an issue.
So, trust issues, says Fran. Back we went to Stephen McGuinness, the PFAI General Secretary.
To have a situation where you are looking for another party to get into an agreement with you, to put 150,000 in, and with 3 full-time staff, as I said, and not discuss it with you in any way, shape or form, put no documentation in front of you, discuss it with you directly, none of that. I can't answer if I find that. I honestly, last night I was shocked that Simone and Ollie, who work with me, the 3 of us rang each other and said, this really happening? Like, are we at this stage that not? And probably the breakdown of communication when you go back to it, Nathan, probably goes back to the women's international stuff. I think the FAI were badly hurt by what happened there. Again, that was from our point of view. We communicated to them, we gave them every opportunity to resolve it, and they didn't, and the stand was made. And I think since then, to be honest, I think relationships have been more strained as each issue has come past. And at no stage have the FAI, as I can see it, ever stepped in to say, look, enough is enough here, and let's try and iron out our issues.
So, fun afternoon for you, Nathan.
It all just seems so bloody unnecessary.
Yeah.
They're in the same building. How has this situation gotten to the phase that it is? They're in the same building. Talk to each other. It's not that hard.
Yeah. No, it's a mess. Like, I think even when they go for coffee or glass of water or whatever, they bump into each other and say, there's
that Bray
happening.
thing? We were thinking of releasing a statement in a few minutes. You're going to give 150 grand. What? Yeah. You're going to give 150 grand. Yeah, you talk about it later. Yeah, I'll be back having a coffee later. We might chat about it.
Do you want milk?
You what? I just dropped me cup there. Yeah, so we'll hear from John Delaney. There was the FAI financial review today, so he gets into that a little bit. Drogheda United getting a new stadium, which they're obviously keen to put out there as a good news story. And the point I was making to John Delaney is nobody cares about these good news stories now, because this is the controversy that undermines everything good that you feel that you're doing out there. And it feels as though it's all of the FAI's own doing. By releasing the statement last night, they inflamed the situation massively. And it means that this Drogheda United story of getting a new stadium is totally overshadowed what they feel are good financial results, and it's going to drag. It doesn't sound from talking to Delaney, Gavin or McGuinness that
no, Stephen McGuinness, he sounded shocked to me by the whole the way the whole thing is spun out, and you'd wonder, how do you not run this by them before you throw this into public domains?
I know we're 2 weeks away from the start of the new Premier League season.
Right.
2 weeks and 1 day. Yeah. And I know some people are up very late at night watching pre-season friendlies. What about the Cork teenager who played in goal for Liverpool against Manchester City in New York last night? Stephen Keller stopped the screamer and they won.
That wasn't a screamer. The Sane won.
That's what our texter says. Yeah. It was a screamer.
It was a decent save with his feet.
Would Karius have saved it, or would he be palmed it into the onrushing
It's an interesting story because he's 19 years old. He never played in goals. He was 13. 6 years later, he was playing for a half against Manchester City. Like it's.
Is there a possibility he starts the season as third choice?
I can't see it. No,
third choice even.
As third choice, yeah, definitely.
So Danny Ward
it's third choice,
or Karius
well, are they going to keep both? I would think they want to keep either Mignolet or Karius. But will either of them be prepared to stay as second choice? That's the issue. Like Mignolet seemed very fed up after losing his place last season. So you'd wonder, is he willing to stay a second choice to even another goalkeeper? And he might have thought with Karius have a chance of getting back in. He must be looking at Alisson to think, I'm not going to get back in. So
seemed to have a couple of decent young goalkeepers. O'Hara at Manchester United was their third choice keeper for part of the season as well. We'll come back to that when we are back with the football show from the week after next. Then we're going to be talking lots more about the return of the Premier League. All this week though, we've teamed up with Europe Car. Whichever way you want to move, Europe Car have a wide range of vehicles available, from hourly options to long-term rentals, with 20 branches nationwide, including those in Clonmel and Limerick. Moving around has never been so easy. They're now giving you the chance to win a kicking session with Europe Car ambassador and new Munster star Joey Carberry for your mini rugby player. The prize includes a 1 hour of training for your child and their friend. You'll be collected from your home by a Europe Car driver in one of the deluxe vehicles in the Europe Car fleet. To put your name in the hat, head over to offtheball.com/rugby/Europe Car and register your details. Children entered must be aged between 7 and 14, and we'll be announcing the winners each day. Kieran, thanks a lot for coming into the studio. As always, Richie's going to be here for the evening with all the latest from the Europa League and any other live sport that's going on. But up next, we're chatting to John Giles.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000